800,000 or whatever the new apparatus may be. So overall, I think we're doing really well right now. There's always something that's out there that could be some underlying issue, but I think between what we have currently in our budget and also in our reserves and everything else, that we should be able to handle a little impact if that were to happen to us. So again, good job by everyone that's working for that. Our internal members, Mr. Berman here, turning a lot of wrenches and doing things internally, both on station maintenance and apparatus and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a point in time where we have to reach out and bring some folks in to be able to help us with some other items. We utilize those services when and if needed, but overall the numbers for the most part are doing quite well. If you're looking at the percentages where you are in ratio to the months that we're in, basically already the end of July. You're looking at those percentages and all that kind of stuff that Lisa shows us there. We're doing quite well. So believe me, Lisa will be on my phone or calling me up or sitting in my office if something was bad. So she keeps me alarmed.
After June here, that's 50% of the fiscal year, which has elapsed, and the budget now is at 43%. So looking pretty good there.
I believe the EMS revenue that's only through the month of May. I don't think June had been posted when I generated this report.
Any other questions or comments? Statements. Hearing none, we'll move on to 6D, review of the commission recommended 2023 district budget.
So I guess we'll take the highlights. I'm sure the fire chief will take the first stab at this, and then I'll take any board members that help me out and then follow up with that. But in a nutshell, to give you a very brief summary of where the 2023 budget is, we've had some long-term planning items that we've been trying to do. And it goes back to the dollars and cents about what our men and women make at the fire district as far as an hourly rate. Last year, 2021, I guess it was, the commission basically decided that we would like to get our people close to the $15 minimum wage, if that kind of item. And we put in 50-some thousand last year, as I recall, into the volunteer reimbursement formula to try to move some of those numbers up. We knew it was not going to get us to 15 by no means. Lisa and I and the board basically looked at it last year and we said, hey, we're going to need to continue to do this trend for a few years to get these numbers up, that kind of stuff. Currently, again, to kind of give you an idea, because we got a wide variety of different folks and members over at the fire district that's starting out basically from the interns, new members coming in, very new to the system, going to school and getting their degrees, working for 3 years and all that kind of stuff, to paid on call members, people like Mr. Berman here to my left, and others that live in the community, drop everything they're doing, come in and do fire suppression EMS duties when they're available or they're not at another job and they're living in the community. And then our paid on premise folks are from not only our close community, but the communities around us, people that come in and basically want to have jobs. Today, I will tell you, I received 3 phone calls from 3 lucky young gentlemen that are basically going to get jobs different parts of the country. And one from Billings, Montana, one from Memphis, Tennessee, and one from down and going to be going into Texas. We are a training ground. There is no better way of putting it. We are a training ground for our young men and women in the fire and EMS careers, usually firefighter medics. They're getting their jobs someplace, again, throughout the country. Last year, if you recall back to our annual report, we had 8 of those individuals that moved on. So we continually, in a lot of ways, have a revolving door training programs, trying to get people caught up to speed where we are and all that other kind of stuff that goes along with it. At that same time, this dollars and cents and everything that's going on in our country, trying to keep up with that is quite challenging at times. Here nor there, we had this direction last year that basically trying to get closer to that $15 an hour. We are not at that now. We are about in the neighborhood of a basic person coming in. When I say a basic person, I talk on a new cadet basically coming into our programs or into our operations. It's around the $10 an hour mark. And if you look at the quick trips and you look at everything else that's going on, if they're doing it for the money, they would be someplace else in a heartbeat. They're doing it because this is compassion, this is a job, this is what they want to do for the community, all that other kind of stuff. Here nor there, at some point, I think we all recognize, the board, myself, we know that we are growing, we're getting more demanding, we're getting more calls. We want to be able to capture our 100 EMS calls a month. We want to capture our 30 fire calls. We don't want to push it to other districts, all that kind of stuff. So we got to move this pendulum of wages and all this other kind of stuff to keep up with that, at the same time hire all this other kind of stuff. So biggest impact of this next budget again, going next year, is basically trying to manage some of that. Of course, we're hiring another full-time person that we approved last year. That person will be coming on and all that kind of thing. I can tell you in this budget, we are not putting in, refresh my memory, Lisa, what are we putting in? We're putting nothing into that particular area. We're just making up our union folks. We're proposed 3% basically across the board there for their salaries and benefits and that kind of stuff, and then just 3% across the board for everything else. We are not making up that $15 an hour is what I'm telling you. We have a very tight budget basically. You see what is in front of you, it's all laid out, and it still has roughly about 11% increase in some of the municipalities, or most of the municipalities that we're looking at and what we proposed and put together. That is pretty much where it is. Lisa talked about the 2% dues and that kind of stuff. Again, 2% dues is the money that's coming in from the commercial part of fire insurances of all of our districts, fire districts, revenues and that kind of stuff. The state of Wisconsin basically takes care of that. They send us a check back, which is in about the $88,000 to $90-some thousand a year. That revenue that we get back here for doing fire inspections and going out and making sure buildings are inspected and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, we are, in this particular budget, Lisa has already put into the calculations using more of that money with our turnout gear and our purchases and that kind of stuff. Most of those revenues will be all expensed next year. We'll still have some reserves and 2% dues and that kind of stuff, but we're using more of that money as we go forward, at least for 2023. Lisa?
We did add an extra $25,000 for the volunteers.
That's right. We put half of what we were going to do. We originally was going to do 50,000. We put it at 25,000, and that's going to move it a very little bit. But if you look at the numbers that we're looking at, we know those numbers are in about the 1,900 to 2,000 hours a year, and depending on what certifications and what membership has and all this kind of thing, it'll move the pendulum a little bit, but it's not going to move it a lot towards this 15. We need to continue to work with that. I've been, I think, at the village board meeting early this spring, and I said, I can't remember who asked me something, maybe it was you, Mike, what does the fire district need, or what can the village do for the fire district? Is personnel and money. Those are probably our biggest items that we'll probably be looking at and for the future and everything else. Those are the items that we will be continually to work at. So the rest of the stuff, I mean, you can go through, you can look at lines, you can say, can you give up this, can you give up that? A lot of that different stuff, Lisa and I challenged ourselves back and forth, and we looked at the different categories. It's pretty well, this is the stuff that we need, these are the ongoing things, these things happen. There's really not a lot. It's the personnel and this other stuff that the benefit packages and the healthcare costs and those things that kind of drive the fire department budget. Lisa, anything to add on that?
No, I don't think so.
So that's what we did. Would we love to get there sooner? Yes, I would love to get there sooner, but I don't see it without taking the numbers even higher. And the board and myself, we thought that this was kind of the compromise and where it is at that time, and they moved this forward for discussion in 23 planning and all that other kind of stuff in the times that we currently live in. Tied with that budget and the rest of the stuff that goes with that last page of this is that document kind of basically shows some of the capitals and some of the things that we're looking at in there. And this is just basically, again, We have right now, the fire district has out, we've got at least 3 grants out there. We got an AFG grant for about 95,000. We've got a group of some men and women basically that are working towards grants and that kind of thing. If we are successful, which some tell me we're going to be successful, they got very high confidence in that this is going to happen. These extrication tools will hopefully get paid for by the federal government. Again, we will know in the days and weeks forward, that kind of thing. We've got some other COVID programs that are out there basically, and trying to get about $104,000 back from some other revenues. And then we've also got some FAP funding and that kind of thing, which we got some in this week, but not a lot. This, smaller dollars, and there's some ARPA funds. So I mean, anything that we can bring in, we're bringing in. We're trying to do what we can, Randy, and continue to bring these funds back to the fire district and all that other kind of stuff. But again, limited basis basically on some of that stuff. Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Mike.
So you talk about being a revolving door. How much do you lose in training costs a year to people walking out?
When you say walking out, you're saying getting another job, going someplace, and that kind of stuff. How much do we lose in training cost? Our training is ongoing every day. So every shift we do training, and we have that kind of thing. We have the Tuesday night training, and that on top of that kind of stuff. There's a dollar in cost factor to that. We've never put our arms around that totally because we do so much training every day. I mean, every day there's training going on. And then people are brought into that mix and trying to make that up. In the beginning, the best way for me to answer that would be like the probation training, that kind of stuff. We bring members and groups together for about 60 to 80 hours per individual, trying to train them to get them up to certain minimums that we want them at. That's just the minimum. That's not where we really want them in the big scale of things. And then in a 3-year rotation, calendar-wise, we have a 3-year plan for fire and EMS that continually does fire and EMS training, different evolutions, fire suppression and ventilations and all the other kind of stuff, gas monitoring and all the other things that they need to know. So it kind of goes on and on. But realistically, I would say I would go back to that 60 some hours that we're probably looking at an individual is what we probably would say that we would lose.
And do you end up using more volunteers because they're not trained to the level you would want them to be?
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, the volunteers are coming in, you're sending them to school, they get 60 hours of training at the basic levels. The 60 hours get you across the plane of door, basically, or being able to go into a smoke-filled atmosphere, according to OSHA and DISPUS and all those folks. And then we try to take that and build off of that, if that kind of answers your question.
And would you expect if you were paying $15 an hour that you would reduce your turnover, or would you still be a training facility?
We would definitely stop this a little bit, and I see where you're going with your questioning. Right now, we are kind of like on the low end of the spectrum. I will say that our neighbors to the south, our neighbors to the west, 2 neighbors to the west, move that pendulum by a few hours. People go where there is money. We have a large volume of calls, but when I say a large volume of calls, I'm talking we can almost guarantee EMTs and different people 4.5, 5 calls a day, every day. Some other places might not get the calls, but they might be getting $4 more an hour for sitting in a fire station for 1 call, maybe every other day. And they're going for where the money is. So money definitely, I hate to say it, but that's money motivates and money definitely retains people. I mean, there's just no way around it. So we've been still fortunate that our lucky thing that has been working for us is call volume. People want calls. That's what they want. They want calls, they want education and all that. And I think at some point we can't expect that to continue forward forever and ever and ever. We got to try to keep up with the trend or the market, trying to keep those close. We offer them the benefit plans here in our fire district and all that kind of stuff, meaning the 1,200 hours. We will not cap someone for 1,200 hours. We will let them into state retirement and pay that small little state retirement and start their fire and EMS retirement system. If they go to a city Madison, that's their start date, and then you just roll it over to another plan basically when they get hired at a different location. And that's been pretty beneficial for us, but it's great for the men and women. And like right now, these 3 individuals that I told you today, they work here, they work at Verona, and they might work at Belleville EMS. So when that one person left, so they're using 3 of us to utilize as a full-time job. And they go, hey, they do this many hundreds of hours here a month, and they do this much here and this much here. So now the 3 of us are going to be looking for, someone else to try to make that up. And the average volunteer or the person coming in, you get some heavy hitters that are doing this stuff or want to do this stuff for careers. They're doing hundreds of hours, and then you got, I'll say like Gene here. He's got a full-time job someplace else doing that stuff. How much time does a person that has a 40-hour work week job have to do fire and EMS when it's inconvenient for someone else? 2 o'clock in the morning, Sunday afternoon, pick your time. I don't care what it is. Christmas Day, you got to drop everything you need to go. You got to always have a set crew basically ready in that fire station to be able to respond. Those are the keys. So we've been fortunate, and that continues to go. More money, bringing in extra dollars, raising those is definitely going to help. And by all means, whenever this group can decide that we can give those folks some more money, I'm in favor of that in a heartbeat.
So did the 3 people who left go for full-time jobs elsewhere? So
100%, yeah.
Oh.
And not full-time staff. It's all of our. It's not our full-time staff. It's our paid on premise, paid on call.
No, I
folks.
meant where they went to.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were going
All
to go for a
full-time jobs.
full-time job.
Yeah, all full-time jobs. And you can't blame the young men and women. I mean, that's what they're here for. That's what they wanted. They're here for, again, 1.5 years, 2 years, and good for them. Good for them, great for us. And you have another place that I can go and visit and catch up with in Billings, Montana. Great place to be, different places, some different vacation places for myself. That's the way I look at it. I gotta have a good, I look at it like I'm happy for them. When they take Oregon people from Oregon Area Fire and EMS, I'm proud of that, because that tells us about our training program here and all that kind of stuff, and the men and women, the Genes and all of the other group that basically pushes these people, get them where to be. They're going through competitive processes for fire and EMS, paramedic jobs. I can't ask for anything better than that. So that's really, that's good to the team. So. Yes, sir.
This might be ignorant, simplistic, but can you, for example, the 3 people that left this year, can you go back and say, okay, what did we pay these people last year? And that's essentially what you're losing when they leave, isn't it? I mean.
Oh, pretty much, and I can tell you already that in 2 of the individuals, we lost probably about 800 and some hours quite easily, just in 2 individuals.
Okay.
And part-time people, so.
I mean, I think that kind of goes to your question somewhat. Yeah.
So all good things, all painful things, just some of the stumbling blocks that we have in today's setup that we have. So something to keep in mind. I don't see where the money, as Lisa and I always joke with each other, I don't see whether we have this money tree in her office that we can start plucking it off and stick it in the coffers of all the fire district to make things better. So when she's got that money tree, she'll let me know, I guess.
Hasn't sprouted yet.
And like the chief says, we're not the only department going through this.
Oh, I'm sure you're not. It's probably-
Everybody's,
Yeah,
yeah. Everybody wants a full-time job.
yeah. I mean, like I said, when you go to Quick Trip across the street and they're paying, what, like $16 an hour to start,
Yeah.
that's hard to compete with.
The other side to this, and I think Martin and I have had this conversation, and I know Jeff Rowell and I have had this conversation, again, to be budget savvy, to think about clever ways of moving forward for ourselves to kind of offset some of this stuff. But it puts a hardship on the village and that kind of thing. But public works members in other departments are usually sometimes, when the municipalities want them, become fire department members for daytime to help with daytime staffing and all that kind of stuff. Now there's both sides to this, that when we start going, if we would go down that road, then you start taking people off the streets and snowplows and different things. So you're just pushing the quarter around, you still might have to make up some of those hours on the other side, or hire another public works person, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of different clever ways that people have done this in other municipalities outside of Oregon, but again, it usually comes with dollars and cents. At some point, it's just like, that's the inevitable. You're just going to have to try to make up some more of these dollars and cents and some of the, full-time employment hours where you need them. So, try not to scare anybody, but trying to be realistic. So,
Yep, and the personnel, seeing their fellow coworkers move on to bigger and better things has gotta be good for morale too, I would think. That's the department. Which is very important. Any more on CIP?
CIP and budget, nope, nothing else here. Any questions, anything else, thoughts? Anybody have a good recipe for me to start putting in for the future that I am missing? Because I am all ears to any suggestions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing none. We will move on to 6F on the agenda. Consider future planning for facilities and potential committee.
So this kind of goes along with, Martin and I have had a lot of discussion back and forth. The village did a CIP for, 10 years was it, Martin? So we asked for the fire district numbers, we gave them all this fire district stuff, we worked in this, we update, we go through all that kind of thing. I talked to our board, the commission basically, and my recommendation to them is, I can come and give recommendations on all that kind of thing to this group, and I have no problem doing that, but I really think more people need to touch this and feel this subject. What that subject is, I'm talking about the future of the fire operations. Mike, I'll go back to that village board meeting when I came, and we talked a little bit about that annual report from last year, and he says to me, Fire Chief, does this mean we're gonna hire double personnel if we have 2 fire stations? Or how is this gonna happen and all that kind of stuff? And I gave that a lot of thought and everything else, and going back and looking at this, constant fighting back and forth for members, our full-time staff, and the dollars and cents and all that kind of thing. I think in our 40-some square miles, 44, 46 square miles that we have, I think the things that we have to look at is the future build-out and what we want to do. Is it going to be 1 fire station with staff people 24/7 and try to keep that staffed at a high number instead of doing 2 stations? And then I go back to what I've always said before. I've told the commission I am a firm believer in consolidated services and looking at others and trying to bring others up board, and to do that, I think someday, probably not in my lifetime, to kind of give you an idea, it's going to happen. It has to happen, in my opinion. We can try to be that leader and try to do that kind of stuff, but we still have to protect our 44, 46 square miles, and we know beyond a reasonable doubt we're going to need to do some kind of an aerial device in this Oregon district. Again, I was saying in the last, when I first came here 6 years ago, I said within the next 5, 6 years ago, that 5 or 6 years ago is gone. Within the next 5 or 6 years, we're going to need to do something with that. The more 3-story buildings, the bigger buildings we get, ISO ratings, the insurance services group is going to clip us a little bit, where I need a ladder within 5 miles basically to have a insurance rating and that kind of thing. That facility over there is not going to house a ladder, and we knew that quite some time ago. We need to plan for that. Again, I can come in and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We throw it on paper. We can put whatever dollars we want on it, and then things go bad, basically, the market and all that kind of stuff, and numbers are way out of whack, and then you got to, reform and all that kind of stuff. But my recommendation to the board was a couple different things. We need to get a group together from our partners here tonight, basically, that wants to look at this and really understand this and sit down and come over to that building and kind of like in-depth discussion, basically, this is what we have. Then we need to start really looking at and talking some conversations, I think, with the village of what is gonna happen with the village hall and any potentials. With the old village hall and that kind of stuff. And again, this is just me taking different ideas and throwing them on a board. None of this stuff by any means is, where I think it should go and all that kind of stuff. But if we start taking buildings and we move total operations, there's a cost at doing that. If you move a building totally and an operation totally, it is kind of expensive. If you start doing some add-ons and some remodeling and take some of that old other stuff and make something else work to the south per se, if something was worked out with the village or with the old village hall, and you did something there with an apparatus bay, you could probably put yourself something in. I think anything we do, again, these are Glenn's thoughts, or your fire chief's thoughts. Anything we do, I like green initiatives, I'll just be honest with you. I like water, geothermal, and I like solar. Those are two things that I think you need to do personally. I think we need to try to control our utility cost at best. If we don't have a utility bill, Lisa, how much am I ahead immediately when I don't have a utility bill? We're paying $3,000 a month?
Yeah, a lot, 36,000.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we can at least start controlling some of those costs, and I understand there's more maintenance on this stuff, believe me, I understand all of the pros and cons with solar, I understand the different things that are going on with pumps, and moving water around and bringing 55-degree water out of the earth and bringing it up, and trying to cool your building and use fans. I get all of the different games. But at some point, we have to do something to we're gonna have to spend a few dollars to save a few dollars is what I'm trying to say. Either we're gonna pay this out in electrical bills and gas bills, or we're gonna have to do some of this other stuff. There's different programs out there with the government and all that other kind of stuff, here nor there. At the end of the day, I think we need a partner group to sit down and start working with myself, the administration, and I don't care if it's a person or two from a municipality, and might not be a lot of meetings and all that kind of stuff, but really to get our arms around this and then really like, hey, what are our options? Where do we want to take this? If we take this off-site, or do we want it on the west side of the town? Do we want to continue downtown where we're currently at? There's just a lot of pros and cons different ways. But I really think we need a work group for that. At that same time, the other thing that I'll just throw out there, I don't know how long it's going to continue to grow, but if you're watching different things, I'm sure Jenna is, and probably I think Wayne and Dina are on top of this, there's been some fire stations basically funded half by the federal government with some of the FEMA money, basically here in the state of Wisconsin. So they've been building some $14 million fire stations where they've been getting half of the cost. So I've got a great dynamic group that would love to be turned loose in working on a grant to try to do that. And I mean, we could really do a good sell, and it's competitive stuff. So, and then you look at our dollars and cents and where our fire district is and all that kind of stuff compared to some of the other demographics in different municipalities. It's going to be competitive, it's going to be hard, but we could give it a shot. If we did that, and all of a sudden we would get that, we need a place to be able to be turnkey basically in a year. And right now we are not in a position to be able to be turnkey and ready. When I say turnkey, I'm talking about, hey, within a year we need to know where we're going to build this thing, because that's what the closeout of a grant is basically, and they're going to give us this money. So we get $5 or $6 million. What do you want to do with it? What are my options? I don't even want to go there and try to get it and then say, well, we get it, and then all of a sudden we have to turn down some money. So we need to come to some consensus for the future if we're going to go that direction, or are we just going to pay dollar for dollar and what this group wants to do. So I would really love a little discussion, a little thought on that, and then we can move forward and maybe form a committee that I would really like to see, if that's what you wanted to do, and if you don't, that's understandable too. Again, I'm just throwing things out there. I am just your fire chief. You run the district. I am just a person that can give you ideas.
Well, I think you're on the right track. I agree with everything you said. Sticking with downtown, I think is the ideal thing. If we can work out something in the village on the buildings down there, if you can make it work. You're close to there when the Summerfest is in town. To me, downtown's the best place for it.
talk to Pittsburgh at all about shared services?
I have not talked to Fitchburg about shared services. Fitchburg and Verona couldn't talk shared services, and they did their own things and went that direction, so that didn't, and they're a lot closer than Oregon, so that didn't work there. We have reached out to some of our smaller operations close to us, and I still think that we will continue to do that, because I still think there's some avenues for that. Keep in mind, I mean, Oregon right now, our makeup and our budgets and how we've been running with the hybrid staffing plan and all that kind of stuff, this is going to, our templates are going to start falling into other places, and people are gonna have to hire more people. And you're gonna see other, I don't care if it's Stoughton, if it's Brooklyn, if it's Belleville, you know, Verona's already there. It's just gonna continue to drive certain things, and like Belleville's EMS already, more and more of those folks are getting paid some fairly decent dollars for some of the staffing. But that's just where it is. I'm just laying those things out, and then maybe some of this stuff, you know, you got a 20-year building over there, a 22-year-old building on that last, you know, that 3-story that you built over there. You get rid of the apparatus bay, and you have somebody design something to the south and put in some apparatus bays and some, you know, some storage with no basement, whatever you need in there. You can probably get by for less money than that capital plan than what I put in originally.
Chief, I'll just say, I think it's always a good idea to be proactive. We don't want to get to a point where we don't know what we're doing, we haven't planned.
Right.
So I think a committee is a good idea.
Yeah.
Plan ahead.
I agree with the committee.
Count it done?
Yes,
Okay.
good plan. We need a plan, obviously, for the future. We don't know where the growth is gonna happen in our communities, exactly where. We have to be flexible on that. And at the same time, we have to be prepared for where that growth happens and how we can service that 46 square miles the best way we possibly can.
So I don't think you have to come up with members tonight, but it would be fair to say that if we ask for a person or two from each municipality in the next month or so, we could, you could reach back to me and let me know who those members are. We could start with that and get that group together and more meetings. We need more meetings. I know, isn't it something? He's shaking his head at me. But I mean, that's where it is. I mean, that's just today's world.
Yep, so everybody just please give that some thought. I'm sure there's people on your various committees that are probably interested in getting together and discussing things like that. And it'd be good to get some more discussion on that going.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, moving on to 6G. And that's just a reminder of the 2022 second payment to the district.
Lisa, I think you sent them out already, didn't you?
I've been doing a lot, and I'm trying, I think I had them send those out already. I'm working on the senior center yet, because I had to do the true up, but I think the fire district ones all went out.
Okay. And 6H is a report on donation of fire suppression units from the Masons and the drone from the Fire EMS Association funds.
Gene, you wanna cover that a little bit?
No, that's fine, you go ahead.
Gene likes these meetings.
You're doing good. What did we get, 6 of these?
4 of them, right?
4 of these?
Yep.
Okay, these are called little fire grenades. We got donated to us by the Masonic Lodge, the Masons. They donated them tonight of safety night at Summerfest. We have a little ceremony over by the exhibit we had over there. These little grenades, you go, so the first responders that are responding to a fire call, so if they get there before an engine arrives on scene, you grab one of these out of the command car, pull the pin, and you can throw it in a burning room and it will slow the fire down. Till the engine and the manpower get there with the water. I've never seen one of these work, but what I've heard and read, that they do a fantastic job on property loss.
We've been eyeing these up and looking at these for a while, and I was after our fire association to do these, and they come with a price tag of about $1,500 a piece, believe it or not. There's 2 safety pins on them, that kind of thing, and they cover roughly about 5,700 cubic feet, if you could think about how big 5,700 cubic feet are. And they use these in a lot of different confined space, different places where there's electrical, computers, and that kind of stuff in earlier forms. Now they went to more, to wood construction and that kind of thing. They got it down to a science, what it does. You can go out there. This is a model made by FST. You look at it online. They've got a lot of different demos done by a lot of different fire institutes. Basically, have shown the suppression on these and how this worked. So basically, again, we're very thankful for what the Masons group here in Oregon brought together and made this donation to the district. We've spread some in the command cars. We're putting some on the ambulances. Again, and the men and women at the end of the day are going to be trained on pulling these pins, not putting themselves in harm's way. Which we mean by that is, if a building is burning, we don't still want them to go in without breathing apparatus and a backup person and all this other kind of stuff. But wherever we can do suppression, open a door, throw it into a living room if we got a room and content fire, that kind of thing. Buy us a little time. This will do a lot of suppression, put a lot of fire out in a short period of time. When the men and women go in, those conditions are just much less is what they're encountering. At the end of the day, it's an additional tool for us. It is not ever going to replace our fire people. Again, I will always say the best suppression in any municipal setting with municipal water is sprinklers hanging in the ceilings 24/7. Cost a couple dollars per square foot, but at the end of the day, you don't need the fire people. The only thing you need the fire people to do is come and to mop it up and basically shut the sprinklers off and contain the water, but the fires are out. And that has been a proven fact with sprinklers. There's no way around it. So, but this is just one of those other tools that help us. And where it's going to be used or that kind of thing, I would assume we will probably, we have a lot of different interesting fires and different things. We get called a lot of stuff. I would assume that you'll see some of these probably being used within the next year. I hate to say that, but that is just the reality of the business that we're in. So again, I appreciate the Masons for making that donation. So
Are those a one and done thing?
that's a one and done thing. That's a
So,
one and done
Chief,
thing.
how does it work? You throw it in and then kind of stuff comes out of it,
Yep,
obviously.
there's a gas that's inside of it. Yep, it's kind of like the old argon
Okay.
extinguishers when you remember those, that kind of stuff. I don't know if you remember years ago, they had a lot of the different salesmen at the county fairs and says, hey, give me a $20 bill. They dip it in some kind of accelerant. They light it. They throw it in a box, and they had these extinguishers basically with the argon that put the fire out immediately, and then gave you a $20 bill back.
Okay.
But it's kind of on that same thing. It does not displace oxygen, but it's a chemical going.
Thank you.
So it doesn't really explode like a grenade?
Nope. You go to the internet, you can kind of see they got some real good night photography and stuff where they had a basement fire. They lit a basement fire and they put it in and they had some crews in and it went off. It's quite interesting to watch and how well it worked. So, and that's the key. So.
There's quite a bit of weight to it too, like, what, 15, 20 pounds?
Yep.
So the chief probably won't be throwing it, we'll have.
That's why I got help. That's why I got help. So.
Any other questions?
Are there different models?
There are all kinds of different models, yeah. There's different models. They make some stuff that they have different stuff out there, Bob, that basically people can use in their camper settings. That kind of stuff, small little things you can hang on the wall, that kind of thing. They have some some different versions. Some different folks have some about the size of a volleyball where they'll have a room and content fire and you'll see somebody roll a volleyball in and the volleyball goes off and puts the fire out. So be quite interesting. I mean, you just take a little cruise on the old internet this day and age, you'd be surprised some of the different marketing things out there.
Okay.
So, and then Gene, if you want to just mention the drone project as part of the $10,000 raffle last year.
Okay, we took the money from our raffle that we did last year. We bought a drone for search and rescue. We borrowed, I think we've had Verona twice, McFarland 2 or 3 times. When that one hiker in the town of Dunn got lost, we had McFarland come over and found the hiker. So we took the money from the raffle and bought a drone for ourselves. We got 6 people going through class to fly them, because you gotta have one certified, considered pilot, gotta be FAA certified, and then everybody else can run under his license, but you still have to be trained. So that's in work in progress right now. So we gotta take a class and then go to an FAA certified instructor and take an exam, so.
So that's all moving along, and again, search and rescue is just one element of it, and then, I mean, we've got a few things that go along with that, basically. We've got the heat vision, basically. You'd be surprised, a person walking on the surface of the earth, 80-degree day, believe it or not, the drone that we looked at, when we did a little research on this and we knew where we wanted to go, we worked with the Sheriff's Department and their drone operators and their folks. We're going to be joint training with some of those folks, working with Officer Sergeant Lehman from the Sheriff's Department and others. At that same time, the capabilities are about 5 miles out, basically. We can go with some of the controllers and that kind of stuff. Not to say that we're going to lose line of sight or anything of that nature, but we've got some good capabilities. And then the different fires and the different things, the complex incidents that we have, when we have people inside of, you think about our grass fires and our different things, when we start worrying about how fire spreads and jumps a creek per se, or jumps a fence line and rolls up a hill, and what's the next thing that the fire is going to be threatening when we're dealing with a few acres or a few square miles. This thing here will also give us some line of sight, so that we'll be able to see what's going on in real time, and having that back with the command people to make those decisions and try to cut things off. Here nor there is trying to make things safer and making operations more efficient out in the field. So that stuff is all being brought on board and up and running. The stuff, we had them ordered for about 6 months. They finally came in, and now the men and women are just starting to train and getting that project up and running. So again, thanks everybody for supporting the raffle last year. And they got another one going this year. I'm not sure where the dollars and cents are going to go otherwise, but it's to operations and stuff of that nature to help our operations, help our men and women in the field. So thank you for doing so.
And possibly canine?
Yep, there's some canine stuff that we've been looking at for accelerants and investigations and all that kind of stuff. We just have to get the folks to really want to work with the dogs and work with the options, and actually reached out to a couple other folks that other departments trying to do more of this. I go back to this sharing our wealth with others and bringing others in, getting some other departments, some other municipalities as part of this, instead of us just being the forefront in the dollars and cents, trying to get some partners and making sure some of this stuff would happen, because we surely don't need a dog every day, but there's some times when, again, we have the fires and certain things that it would definitely aid us in, so.
Search and rescue.
Yep, all of that kind of thing.
These
So,
are part-time or full-time dogs?
full-time dogs. Yep, full-time dogs. You got some time, Mark, there? You want to be our newest member to our canine team? We'll take you on, sir.
So much.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. But yeah, a lot of different things, and that's where we be.
So if you'd like to purchase some raffle tickets, stop by the station and we'll take care of you.
Great.
We did already.
You never know who's gonna win.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll have a little discussion about scheduling a future joint meeting.
Is that already been decided? 4th week of September? And what's that date, Martin?
September 21st. It's usually when we schedule it.
September 21st is the normal date, Jeff,
Okay.
at 6:30 PM.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's September 28th.
28th, okay, sorry. 6:30 PM at the senior center. We good?
That's the fourth, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
6:30, September 28th. Okay, anybody else have anything to say before we adjourn for the evening? Hearing none, we'll adjourn the town done board. We are adjourned. I am adjourned.
That's an easy one, right?
Let me just preface that with, the rest of our board and our staff are involved with other activities this evening. I'm sorry they couldn't attend, but they wanted to, but they're at the groundswell. Town Dunn's getting an award from them this evening. It's kind of a big thing, so they're happy to be there. I'm happy to be here with you folks, so. Okay, so we will adjourn the Oregon Area Fire and EMS District Commission. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we are adjourned. And I will continue with the Town of Oregon, Town of Rutland, Village and Oregon meeting.
Yes, so we turn to the senior center, which has nothing nearly as exciting as drones or fire grenades.
Shared dogs.
What was that?
Shared dogs.
Shared dogs, we'd be happy. We have some therapy dogs that come in and visit regularly, and I'm not sure they have the personality you're looking for, though. We have dog shows in the parking lot periodically. We could talk about sharing the dogs, bring the dog to the dog show.
Good idea, see, we're already making
We're already, partnerships everywhere. It's important stuff. So now, okay, get yourselves back awake and focused on a different subject, brains out of fire and into senior centers. The first thing on the senior center agenda is a review of statistics of the participating communities and other users of the senior center for the first 11 months of the contract year. Oh dear, this is dull. And this is long, and this doesn't even make sense to you if you haven't read the senior center's supporting contract, because it's just a bunch of numbers if you don't know how they get plugged into a formula. And if you don't understand the formula, it's all kind of meaningless to you. So you can look at this, and you can get a certain amount of information out of it, like on the first page, usage by municipalities. It tells you right on the top line, 160 people from the Village of Oregon received 1,178 and a half hours of case management services in the first 11 months of the contract year. That is riveting. Or not. But I'm providing these to you because it allows you to kind of track some interesting stuff here. But it really isn't very helpful until you look at the contract. We're going to be talking about the contract later in this evening. So it may make more sense to you when we actually talk about the contract. So if you think you have questions about this, I'll answer them now if I can. But you may find that you actually have more questions about this when we get down to, I think it's agenda item C, overview of the current service agreement. Because then you can start to see how the numbers get plugged in. So does anybody want to ask anything about these 3 pages of riveting numbers now? No, you're just overwhelmed with them. Okay. So we'll move on to the second thing on the senior center part of the agenda, which is the financial statements for the first 6 months of the year. And if I were in your shoes, I'd be looking at, are they under budget or are they over budget? And the answer is under budget. The answer you all want to hear. We're doing fine this year. The building is held together reasonably well so far. So we're hopeful that will continue for the rest of the year, which will have a lot to do with whether we can stay under budget. But anybody have questions about how we're doing budget-wise in the first half of the year? I mean, I gave away the big ending, right? We're under budget, so.
What percentage are you under by?
Well, we're about 5% under, 4.5% under?
Yeah, about 5%.
Yeah. So, we're doing okay. But then we get to the third part of the agenda, which is kind of the story that needs to be told about the senior center. This is the overview of the current service agreement and the budgeting process. This is all about funding, and funding is complicated. I've had an opportunity to talk to some of your board members, some of your staffs about senior center funding and the whole history and the evolution of it, and for those of you who've already heard it once, I apologize. I'm gonna offer kind of a condensed version tonight, because not all of you have heard this story. So figuring out how the senior center is funded is kind of like putting a puzzle together. There's a variety of pieces that we put together every year and try to make it look like a picture. And the municipalities that support us are an important part of that. You're an important piece of the puzzle, and we really appreciate what you offer to the center every year. And we're gonna talk about your piece of the puzzle in a few minutes, but we're gonna start out with the piece of the puzzle that is what comes from the county every year. And that has a backstory, there's a history there. So back in the 60s, some of you weren't even here by then, but back in the 60s, federal government decided to create the Federal Older Americans Act to help support services for seniors that they needed. And they took federal dollars and told the states, each state was gonna get a certain amount based on their population, and the states could distribute that money how they saw best. Wisconsin decided to distribute it county by county, and that's why Dane County created the Dane County Area Agency on Aging, or as it is known, AAA, which is not gonna come save you when you have a flat tire. It's a different kind of AAA, a lot of people make that mistake, but. So the Dane County Area Agency on Aging was born, and they had to think about what were they gonna do with the money that they had. Were they going to focus it all in one place and have all the older adults in the county have to go to Madison to get services? Thankfully, no. They didn't make that choice because that's hard on a lot of people to make that trip. So they decided to support a network of senior centers, of which we are one, all around the county. And they decided to distribute that money based on school district lines. So the Oregon Area Senior Center provided services to the Oregon School District. That was great for the Village of Oregon. A little more confusing for some of the rural parts of our school district because, you know, the town of Rutland was in a couple of different school districts, so they had some of their people getting services from here and some from Stoughton. And the town of Dunn had their citizens in 3 different school districts, so they had people. But geographically it made sense because it meant that people were traveling not terribly long distances to get to where they needed services. So this worked for a while. School district lines were great until they weren't. Because what happened? Fitchburg decided to build a senior center. They didn't decide to build a school. They're still in our school district, but they got their own senior center. So some of the money that had come to the Oregon Senior Center got moved to the Fitchburg Senior Center. And the Oregon Senior Center said to the outreach worker who had been employed here working with Fitchburg, we're sorry, but we apparently don't need your services anymore because we don't serve Fitchburg. And our services were cut back because our service area was cut back. We continued on with the school district lines for a while, and it was working okay until, well, I'm gonna stop before we get to the until. We'll just cover basically the 4 pieces that the county gives us money for. the county grant was never meant to cover all of the costs of a senior center, but it was meant to cover part of the case management expenses. So they provide funding to the senior centers to offer case management services. That's based on a formula, depending on how many people are in our service district, whether we're considered rural or urban. All of our district is rural. Even though this is a village, we're still rural. We don't have city buses and the kinds of things that cities have. It depends on how many people of color we have. It depends on what our average income is in the area. So there's a formula. And they give us a certain amount of money, and they expect us to serve a certain number of people and provide a certain number of hours. They give us some money for nutrition. The senior nutrition program, the county uses funding that doesn't come from us except through our tax dollars indirectly, but doesn't come from the municipal budgets to pay for the cost of the food that is provided in the nutrition program. And so if somebody comes here to eat, that is being paid for by other tax dollars, but also by the donations that they make. So sitting behind Jean back there up against the wall, there's a little donation box attached to the wall. If somebody comes in here to have lunch and sticks money in there, money goes back to the county to help offset the cost of those meals. The meals we serve over at Ziggy's restaurant on Thursdays is all paid for by the county. That's not any local dollars that covers those expenses. So those are the two components that they tell us at the beginning, well, the end of the year, how much they're gonna give us for the next year, and we can count on those. The other two components are, you gotta earn them. We're setting aside so much money for you, but you're gonna have to earn it. So, we have an adult day program, an adult daycare here. People pay money to come attend that. Not everybody can afford that, but they still need that service. If their income is low enough, we can earn that money from the county to pay the amount that that person should be paying to attend that adult day program. And the fourth component, similarly, is Medicaid case management. So for those of you who don't live in this world all the time, Medicare is what pretty much everybody gets, pretty much usually when they're 65. Medicaid is for people who are very low income and qualify to receive health insurance based on their income. They sometimes need case management. We can provide that to them at younger ages. But we have to earn that. And we don't know who's gonna come in our door. If we're gonna have 16 people come in our door in the course of a year who are really low income, or if we're gonna have 3. So we get the grant, 4 different pieces. That's the county's piece of our puzzle. You guys are the next piece of our puzzle, the municipalities. So, started out with the school district. Fitchburg decided to do their own thing. Eventually, Dunn decided it would rather receive part of its services from McFarland instead of from Oregon. So they chose to withdraw from the contract that we had then, which was a population-based contract. So the part of our budget that wasn't covered by that county grant, that was covered by our municipalities, was based on the population of each place in our service area. So about half of Rutland was part of our service area, part of Dunn originally was part of our service area, Town of Oregon, Village of Brooklyn. If the I have no idea how accurate those numbers are, but if the Town of Oregon had 16% of the total population of the school district, and they paid 16% of the part of the budget that wasn't covered by other funding sources. There was a thought that that wasn't really fair, because population, I mean, somebody's town might be heavily youthful. Somebody's town might be far enough away that their people weren't using the center as much as perhaps the village where everybody lived closer. So eventually, when Dunn decided they were gonna go to McFarland for their case management services, They gave notice they wanted to get out of that population-based contract. They had hoped we would do something that would reflect use. A municipal working group was formed, and that included Bill Van Campen, then from the town of Oregon. It included Dale Besky from the town of Rutland. It included, we had, at the time, we had Chris Johnson at times from the town of Oregon, but we also had Village of Oregon's administrator, Mike Grace. We had Nadine Walston from the Village of Brooklyn. But anyway, it was a group, a municipal working group was formed to try and come up with a contract that wouldn't just be population-based. And that contract is a reasonably complicated document that's part of your packet tonight. And part of that contract recognized that use of the center was an important component in figuring out how the center should be paid for. So the senior center got software, it's called My Senior Center, that people came into the center and they swiped their cards. It's kind of behind Jean on the counter back there, there's a black screen. People have little barcodes, kind of like we're all groceries. I tell the volunteers they're all star fruit because there are stars. But they scan their card and then they touch the screen about what things they're here to do. And so it allows us to kind of keep track of who's using the center and in what way. So the working group decided it would be more fair to figure out who's actually using the center. But not all uses are equal, right? So it doesn't take as much effort on the part of the staff to have a group of seniors back there playing euchre as it does to take care of the call from a senior who says, I need a ride to the doctor on Thursday and I don't have anybody who can take me. And then the case manager says, well, I'll start making some calls. Let's make sure you qualify, but we're gonna find you a ride. So they realized that we needed to weight the different uses of the center so that uses that are more, more resource intense are weighted more heavily than resources that aren't so user intense. Because it doesn't take a whole lot for us to say, have fun playing euchre, is it warm enough in there for you? So that contract came along, and after a lot of back and forth, and the boards all looked at it, and I think some of the board's lawyers looked at it, and everything, it got signed and put into place, and that was about 2011. A few years later, the Village of Brooklyn decided they didn't want to be part of that agreement anymore. They were concerned that there's enough variability within that contract, enough fluctuation based on usage, that they were afraid they might get caught paying more money than they thought they could afford. So they basically said, we're not going to be part of that contract, but we're going to give you $15,000 a year instead. Well, Jerry Bollig was on the Village of Oregon's board. Jerry was very concerned that the Village of Brooklyn pay its fair share. So Jerry used to ask Lisa to plug into the formula what Brooklyn would be paying if they were still part of the contract. And Lisa would do this when Jerry would ask. And, because we still are collecting all the same data. And it turned out that Brooklyn was still paying its fair share, and then some. In part, they paid a little bit of a premium for the security of knowing what their amount was going to be. So they didn't deal with fluctuations. So Brooklyn is kind of a different piece of the puzzle now, but they're still a piece of the puzzle. Town of Dunn, when they pulled out, this is where things get like, really? Do you ever read a book where you can't keep track of all the characters? This is where this happens. So when the town of Dunn pulled out and moved their services to McFarland, for reasons I still don't understand because I can't keep track of all the characters, McFarland had been providing services to the eastern half of Rutland, even though the eastern half of Rutland was in Stoughton's district. But Stoughton apparently didn't have the resources to provide the services to the eastern half of Rutland, so somehow, somewhere along the line, the eastern half of Rutland had just been kicked to McFarland. Well, now McFarland had done. And McFarland was not really able to handle all of that, and they said, well, if we're gonna have done, we can't do that, and Rutland. So then, all of Rutland ended up coming to Oregon. Now our school district lines are all messed up, right? Because we've got all of Rutland, you guys are in 2 different school districts. We don't have any of Dunn, even though part of them are in our school district. But Dunn still makes a contribution, because when we look at the statistics, we can see their people are still very much using our center. And Dunn recognizes that. So they've continued to be a piece of the funding puzzle too. So we've got a few other pieces in our funding puzzle. There's the adult day program that we talked about. People pay a fee to use that. That money comes into the center. That's one of our pieces of funding. Our Council on Aging, our fundraising arm, raises money for the center, uses it in various ways. While they are not part of our budget, they help cover the cost of things that would otherwise likely end up in our budget. So I do think of them as one of our pieces of the puzzle. So our current contract, you've got in your packet, and the very last page is the weighting, all the different points that are assigned to different activities. So when you're looking at those statistics that I started with tonight, it helps you see when we talk about how many people in your municipality use wellness features and how many points that's worth. You can see what the wellness options are, and you can see that each one of those things is worth 3 points. Lisa spends a fair amount of time, I think, plugging in all of those numbers to this contract formula to figure out everybody's fair share. How much has your population used our senior center in any given year? So a fair amount of thought went into trying to make that as equitable as it could be to all of the supporters of the center. I guess this agenda item was also supposed to talk a little bit about the budgeting process. So every year under this contract, every year, August 15th, you get a preliminary budget for the senior center. And I will emphasize the word preliminary because it's really our best guess. August 15th, we don't know yet what's gonna happen with health insurance premiums for the next year. I don't know until usually late October what the county grant amount is going to be. So we send that one out in mid-August. When we meet again at the end of September, we try to have a refined, much closer idea of what the budget might look like. And that budget is our operating budget. And I know we've talked some about capital improvement plan, capital improvement expenses, the CIP tonight. Chief was talking about the fire district's CIP. The budget that you get from us in August is what we consider to be our operating budget. You will get before the meeting in September our capital improvement project plan. But there is money in that operating budget for things like fixing whatever's gonna go wrong that year. Because the building is 62 years old and was kind of a pole barn to begin with. And the remodel to the original the original remodel is 1980, and then they remodeled again in the 90s. but a lot of the appliances, a lot of the infrastructure hasn't been replaced since the late nineties when the last remodel happened, and, you know, we're getting past the useful life of a lot of stuff here that we're trying not to repair or replace if we don't have to. So, it's our operating budget. There's not a lot of money in the operating budget for those kinds of expenses, in large part because this group has talked in the past about how we'd rather not budget for something that we may not have to pay for. We'd rather deal with it if it happens. So, the bigger projects that might require larger amounts of money will be in the capital improvement plan. So, that was probably not the most riveting story you've ever heard. Probably feel like you've been sort of dragged along on a history of the senior center that you really didn't want to know, but it helps you understand why the contract that we have now is the contract that we have now. And we'll talk more about that in letter D, or E. But does anybody have any questions at this point? Yeah, Jennifer.
Okay, so on 11, on page 11, the value that's assigned, what out of those can only the municipalities that contribute to the budget, what of those are they able to use? Only those services. So like Oregon, Rutland.
Oh, okay, I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
So if you live in one of the service areas, one of our service areas, not Dunn, not Fitchburg, you have access to everything that's on here, but you also have access to what they don't have access to, home delivered meals. You have access to transportation services, and that there's several transportation services. There's getting a ride to the doctor's office. There's having a van pick you up and take you to the food pantry. Having a van pick you up and take you to the grocery store. Having a volunteer pick you up and take you, did I say this already? To the doctor. Yes, I did. We'll have a van bring you in for meals. So transportation services are only available to our service area. And case management is only available to our service area.
So that would be like the number 4, the unit value for outreach by case managers.
No.
Oh,
So the case management is handled a little bit differently in this contract. So case management is not a weighted item. It is charged on a 3-year rolling average by use. So it is a use-based cost, but because it can vary a great deal from municipality to municipality. So for example, if we have a senior who comes to us, or whose family alerts us, or whose neighbors alert us, is living in a situation with no running water, no heat, broken out windows. Unfortunately, this actually happens. They need help. It's gonna take a lot of hours on case managers, on part of a case manager, to get ahead of that situation, to figure out, is there income, where's it going, what's going on, how do we get the utilities restored to this person, which, wow, that's really a thing. There's a long process involved in that. So it could be a lot of hours devoted to one person, but the next year that person may be totally stabilized, or may have moved to assisted living, or who knows what, and then those hours are gone. So in an effort to keep municipalities from kind of maybe doing some yo-yoing, they decided to do a 3-year rolling average. So case management is charged on a 3-year rolling average. It's not part of this point system. And do you have any other insights you wanna offer on that one?
Well, the contract spells out exactly the costs that are involved that the 3-year rolling average is based on. It's complicated.
If you haven't read through it, read through it, it's a lot of fun. It's actually on
if
page 4 of the contract.
you're in Fitchburg, you could utilize all of these services on the back. If you came like from a different municipality, all of these services would be available to someone,
For example, loan closet is not.
okay?
The shopping is not, because that's transportation. So those are both 4-point items. Some of the things, like adult day program, which is a 5-point item, is something that they're paying for, and that, so we're making money from them being here, but also we make sure that we have a preferential policy for people who live in our service area, so that if they ever needed to come and there wasn't a space available for them, someone else would be asked to, somebody who's not in our district would be asked to leave. So yeah, we have people who come here for Zumba, for example, and they pay us to come to our Zumba class, and that is benefit to us because we make some money from that. Yeah, so our people go to other senior centers, and other municipalities' people come to us. But yeah, so we do, however, have those primarily those most expensive services, the home delivered meals, transportation, case management, all remain just our area. And then the loan closet.
Is case management the most expensive service?
So we have 2 part-time case managers. When Dunn left our service area, we scaled back our services. We went from 2 full-time case managers to 2 4-day-a-week case managers, and it's never gone back up. It's hard, I guess it's kind of hard to say what the most expensive service is. Expensive in general, expensive to the municipalities, I don't. Yeah. Anything else? So we were gonna move on to the update on the future senior center building project. I don't know that this is news to anybody, but in case it is, the village board, the Oregon Village Board authorized the publishing of an RFP for an owner's representative to assist the village through a first phase of considering a new senior center. And that first phase would consist of a space needs analysis. What is the senior center, the future building need in terms of space, given demographics and usages and all those kinds of things. The next part of a first phase would be site due diligence, which would be looking at this spot, which I think is the preferred spot if all other things being equal. We were able to stay here, but we need to figure that out. We need to look at this site and see what are its challenges and what are its opportunities. And then the third part of that first phase would probably entail seeing what the community might want to do with a future senior center building project, what they might prioritize for that project. So we're in the process right now of exploring the responses to the RFP to see who might be a good fit for representing the village's interests as we go through that first phase of a possible future building project. I think every meeting we've had lately of this sort, I remind people that in the contract that we've been talking about tonight, there's a provision in there that specifically excludes any future building costs from this contract. This is simply doesn't deal with how does that future senior center get paid for. Questions about the building project? And then the last part of the agenda is really, we titled it, Consider the Future of the Service Agreement After 2023 and Whether to Direct the Municipal Working Group to Address. So by the time that agreement in your materials tonight comes to its conclusion in 2023, because that's when the current term would end, it will have been in use for about a dozen years. It'll have been, and I find that hard to believe, how time goes. But it'll have been what we've been operating under for 12 years. And we'd kind of like to know, I'd kind of like to know from the municipalities whether you think it's time to look at how municipalities support the center. Because discussions about support are best had well in advance of the current agreement expiring. If you're gonna contemplate whether you wanna make a change, don't do it at the last minute, do it sooner than that. So, the working group was the municipal working group was the platform or the vehicle through which the previous contract was studied and created, and I'm just curious about whether the boards think that the working group should be looking at this agreement as something that might be improved or replaced. Wayne, are you nodding over there?
Yeah, I think we should. Kate's been keeping us informed what's going on, so I just want you to stay that way.
So you'd like the working group to look at
Yep.
what can we do differently after 2023?
Yep, I think, to me, it sounds like you've done some discussion on that already, and Kate's been keeping us informed, so that's the way
Okay,
Kate's willing to stay on, that's what I like to do,
okay,
keep her on that board.
okay. So, I guess we have our members, and we can certainly start to look at that and have some discussions about what we want to do. So the working group has typically been meeting the fourth Thursday of every month. For those of you who are on that group, fourth Thursday of every month here at the senior center, and I think we're back to 10:30 meetings starting this August. And I do not believe we have a meeting this week, because we had now. So this was, yes, in lieu of that. So, thank you all very much. I realize that senior center funding is a complicated subject. It's not something that I figured out overnight, and I live in it all the time. So I'm always willing to answer questions or provide information if you've got questions. So, and thank you for your support of the center. It's much appreciated.
Maybe the next meeting, then, if you guys, when we all get together, if you have a summary of what you guys have discussed in your meetings, to keep us up to date, everybody will be up to date then. If you guys made any progress or what you've done in your meetings,
Between now and September,
I don't guess any far away, is it?
I was gonna say, we'll have had one meeting.
Well, I think we've kind of decided that it's time for a new contract in terms of term.
Any agreement after a dozen years deserves a relook. See if there's
Okay, that's something, don't we know?
yeah, I mean, always deserves a relook, see if there's a better way, so.
Thank you, Rachel.
If you don't have any other questions, I think I appreciate your time. And I think you can go enjoy the rest of this lovely summer evening.
So I think we need to adjourn, so I'll ask the village board, can I have a motion in a second?
I'll motion to
Okay, and Derek, all in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.
I'll make a motion to adjourn until Oregon.
Motion for us to adjourn, is there a second?
I'll second it.
From Kate to adjourn at 8:03. All in favor, say aye.
Colin was
Oh, shoot, it was, yeah.